Hi Jeanette, we're here at Step It Up New Zealand event. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me. This is Jeanette Fitzsimmons, ex-New Zealand Green Party leader and one of my personal heroes. Jeanette, I just would like to talk to you about the sorry state of New Zealand politics today in the wake of the dirty politics scandal. It seems very much like our country is becoming the 51st state of America, and I'm wondering what your take is.
Well, I've certainly seen the state of politics decline over my lifetime, but I think it's very, very important that we don't allow that to push us into the position of saying, oh, politics is dirty, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Politics is how we make the big decisions about how we run our lives here, and it's very important that we get involved and clean it up rather than just saying, oh, it's horrible, I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's certainly true that for the last 6 and a bit years we've had a government which just wants to be a client state of the United States, and that's where a lot of the problem has come from, whether it's foreign wars, whether it's consumerism, whether it's mining and fracking or genetic engineering or whatever it is. If Uncle Sam says jump, we want to jump. And we have to try and change that by changing the way politics is done. But also the nastiness that has been revealed by Nikki Haga's book, the close connections between the Prime Minister and a really nasty blogger, has given everything a bad taste, and it's good that that's come out. I'm sure there is more that could come out as well. And then there's the whole surveillance thing, the law that's going through at the moment, allowing for 48 hours of video surveillance in your home without a warrant. This is absolutely outrageous. And there hasn't been a big public reaction. I think people just feel stunned, like, oh, what do we do about this? Where is we got left to go? 2 days for submissions. So we have to fight back.
And very much we've seen activists targeted, including members of my media team over the last few years, and it's a shame that on one hand we have the Bill of Rights which says that it is a protected right to engage in political activism, but then we have the reality where companies, even for profit, are indeed spying on activists. And it is difficult when you do only have a 2-day window for submission. Do you see how do you see the situation going forward? How do we fight back against such a corrupt political process?
Well, I think gatherings like this weekend, where we have activists who are working on a lot of very different campaigns that normally don't have much to do with each other, all coming together and sharing tactics and strategies and campaigning tools and media savviness, and listening to some really inspiring speakers. I think that helps build a counter movement, which is what we need in the country.
Also, some of our international counterparts have made the point that I believe with the Stasi regime in East Germany, that they had as many as 10% of the population that were engaged in subverting political activism and movements, and yet, as they say, the Berlin Wall still fell. So is that what we need to do? Do we need to turn our attention away from that small sector of society that's persecuting us and more into just the issues and hope that critical mass will win the day?
Well, I think there's always been a creative tension. I think there's always been a creative tension between opposing the bad and building the good. I've always felt myself I have to put some of my energy into building the good structures and the good projects that bring people together and that build a better future, along with opposing the bad ones, whether it be oil drilling or coal mining or surveillance or whatever. And I think it's also important that we honour everybody in the movement who is working on some bit of it, because it's all part of the whole, and that we don't say the bit I'm working on is more important than the bit you're working on, because actually it's all part of the whole.
I totally agree with you. All the issues are definitely connected. I do, as a child of the 80s, feel like this country has fallen so far. We used to be very, very proud of our achievements, specifically our social justice achievements, and that was something we would even brag about when we would travel overseas. Much of that seems to be lost now, and it seems that once again we're in the same kind of epic battle as we saw in 1981. Do you think that we can win this? Do you think that we can regain what New Zealand once was?
I don't like the idea of going back to the past. I think there were always things about New Zealand that I would have wanted to change. There are some things that have got worse. There are also some things that have got better. Our society is now more tolerant of people with gender differences, for example. That's not an issue I've worked on personally, but it's one I'm glad to see succeed. We're not all the way there yet, but we have made progress. So I want to go forward in building a better world. We can learn from the past, we can draw on the past, we can try and regain bits of the past, but let's not say, oh, we want to go back to the ideal days of the 70s or whatever. I mean, Muldoon wasn't the greatest Prime Minister to have to work under either, actually. And there was a nastiness in politics then that a lot of people today don't remember or know about. And we don't want to go back to that.
I've noticed with Sue Bradford's initiative for having a new progressive think tank, it does seem that there are people building new organisations outside of Parliament. Is that the direction then that we must go in when we cannot progress in Parliament?
Parliament can't make any progress unless there's progress in civil society. It has to be done outside of Parliament. Parliament will follow when there's a big enough movement outside demanding change, and that's how it's always happened. There are a few occasions when inspired leadership in Parliament can lead, but mostly Parliament follows what the people are demanding, and if Parliament is being led by a Prime Minister who takes his direction from overseas, then the movement in civil society has got to be extra powerful in order to shift the direction.
Well, here's hoping for the future. It is inspiring to be at an event like this and see, on one hand, the new students coming through and learning, and on the other hand, people like yourself who've been engaged in these struggles for decades.
It's very inspiring for me to come to a gathering where there are so many young people, because I'm sick of everybody I'm working with being over 65.
Same faces. So have you learned anything this weekend?
Oh yes, I've learned heaps, and I've got to go away and reflect on the work that I'm doing now and how the new learnings can add to that. If there's ever a time when I don't learn from a whole weekend of being with activists, then it will be time I was dead.
My grandmother, who's now passed on, always used to say, knowledge is the lightest load that you can carry. Yes. Thank you so much, Jeanette.